Good afternoon and welcome to the Distance Learning Webinar Series. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la serie de seminarios de aprendizaje a larga distancia. I am Veronica Aguilar and I'm the Director of the English Learner Support Division at the California Department of Education. I started my career as a teacher, teaching bilingual Spanish programs, language acquisition programs, high school algebra and computer science, and I am still a teacher at heart.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lori Kelling, and I'm an Education Programs Consultant with the Language Policy and Leadership Office at the CDE. I was a classroom teacher for many years and consider myself to always be a teacher as well.
On behalf of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurman, we welcome you to this webinar on distance learning, English language development, and dual language instruction. The California Department of Education is committed to supporting districts, schools, and families as we continue this transition to distance learning. Today, this webinar will address resources and practices that support English learners and multilingual learners within a distance learning environment. You will hear valuable information from the English Learner Support Division and two local education agencies, or LEAs as we commonly call them. The San Bernardino County representatives will discuss their approach to provide English language development to the English learners in a distance learning environment. The Woodland School District representatives will discuss their approach to provide instruction in two languages to continue their dual immersion programs during distance learning structures. Both LEAs are examples of the English Learner Roadmap policy in practice while solving real-world issues of today. But first, some housekeeping. Please enter your questions in the chat box. We continue to update our resources and have created a set of frequently asked questions. Your questions and suggestions in the chat box will assist us to continue to build resources. Please keep yourself muted during this meeting. A recorded version of this webinar will be posted along with the PowerPoints on the COVID-19 webinar webpage. The link to where the webinars and the PowerPoints will be posted is at the end of this presentation. Next. In this unprecedented time of COVID-19, we must ensure that English learners continue to be served as local education agencies implement their distance learning plans. LEAs are to continue to provide English learners with designated and integrated English language development, or ELD, and access to grade level instruction and assignments. It is important to note that local education agencies have the flexibility to design services that support English learners so that they are able to access grade level content they are learning. The LEAs determine where, when, and what services students receive in order to continue to make progress towards English language proficiency and meet grade level academic achievement. And that is the goal, for them to continue to build their knowledge in English and academic content. It is also important to note that neither state nor federal law requires a specific number of minutes for English language development. However, there must be sufficient instruction provided to ensure that English learners are meeting their language and academic goals. Next. For dual language instruction in this era of distance learning, wherever possible, maintain the language balance according to the design and goals of the dual language program. The daily schedule should reflect the designated times when students receive instruction or are working on activities in each language. And I'm so glad Woodland Unified School District is here to share how to do it, the practical aspect of it. In addition, all students receive scaffolded instruction in their targeted language, whether it be in English or in a different targeted language. And today you're going to see how it can be done in Spanish, but this applies to any language that a school district is currently having dual language programs in. Next. In July of 2017, the California State Board of Education adopted the California English Learner Roadmap policy, which contains 4 principles that provide the foundation for work with English learners in California. Something to consider as well in our work on in-distance learning. The 4 principles, as you know them, are assets-oriented and needs-responsive schools, intellectual quality of instruction and meaningful access, and that will be the focus of one of our presenters. Systems conditions that support effectiveness, alignment, and articulation within and across the systems. The California English Learner Roadmap Guidance document, which can be downloaded from the link on this slide, describes each of the principles in detail. Accompanying elements within each principle assist readers to see what actions lead to successful implementation of the principle. As we move forward with distance learning for English learners and multilingual learners, it is critical that we align our work with the principles of the English Learner Roadmap Policy and Guidance document to ensure that the needs of students are being met as they navigate distance learning. Although the 2 local education agencies we will hear from today sought to optimize their structures from distance learning, each local education agency demonstrates that the 4 principles are an integral part of their approach to instruction for English learners and multilingual students, even in this COVID-19 circumstances. Next. Now, let us view an excerpt from the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools webinar titled Considerations for English Learners and Online Learning. In this segment, you will witness the EL Roadmap Policy, Principle 2, Intellectual Quality of Instruction and Meaningful Access represented. This webinar was originally recorded on April 15, 2020. The excerpt was chosen from the webinar and focuses on providing practical tools that educators can use during distance learning to support English learners. The content addresses online learning using the 6 key considerations for supporting English learners, published in an article by Heather Skibbins from Sobrato Early Learning Academic Language, or as we commonly know it, the SEAL project. This section of the webinar focuses on the first 2 key considerations, explicit focus on rich academic language and emphasis on oral language, while keeping the intellectual quality of instruction and provides meaningful access. Thank you to the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools for making this webinar accessible to us, and special thanks to Angelica Hurtado, Rosemary Hyder, and Sonal Patel for their presentation.
So today, we will be sharing the 6 key considerations for English learners in instruction. We want to give to the Sobrato Early Academic Language Model, which is the SEAL model, and to Heather Skibbins for sharing this wonderful resource. So the way this is going to work is that we're going to present key considerations, and then Sana will come in at the end of each of these considerations to talk about the best practices for online learning. So, this virtual platform, I want you to keep in mind, and I know that it's been a big change for all of us, but we can still help our students develop rich, powerful, and precise language in a distance learning model. And that is our job today. We want to do that for you. We want to show you the different platforms that you can use. We know how important it is to build our students' vocabulary. So the first one has to do with explicit focus on rich academic language. So we need to ask ourselves, what language do we want our students to have in order to engage in the learning activities that we are planning for them? So considering that it is now a virtual platform, we want to make sure that we select vocabulary that our students can learn. And then we want to focus either on content words or on tier 2 words. And as you notice, the tier 2 words here. Again, we have a link where you can go and you can actually see very briefly by reading Rockets, it'll take you on how you can select tier 2 words. And so we have to be strategic about choosing those vocabulary words. We need to make sure that we model the words in context. And you know what? Showing a routine in a short video for your students. For instance, doing the I do, we do, and you do. I want to go back to tier 2, and I just want that we know that the tier 2 are the words that are most helpful to our students, because those are the words that are going to help our students understand either the video, the reading, the assignments that you will give them, or even the lesson that you are teaching. So today we're going to see and hear I'm going to model a little bit on the I do, we do, you do. So pretend that we're looking at the word activist. So today we're going to see and hear the word activist in our video. The word is activist. I do, activist. We do. Say it with me, activist. Now you say it by yourself. And so you can try little routines like that with your students as you record short videos for them. So teaching all students the academic language that they need to comprehend academic texts and to write academically and to engage in classroom discussion includes teaching them the language functions related to the cognitive academic tasks that they encounter. And so here we're going to focus on the language functions because they're so important. Some of the language functions, for example, are the cause and effect that we hear all the time, students learning, the compare and contrast. Here we have the link that can take you to the language functions, and it's a document written by Seal, and this whole entire document is on language functions. So you can go there and browse and learn more about language functions. And so what I wanted to illustrate with this slide is how I took the ELD standards in part 1. I selected the 3rd standard in 6th grade. And I just thought, well, if I want my students to be able to participate and support opinions, then I can use in my virtual lessons these types of stems or sentence starters with my students, which that would be the expectation for more or less each of the levels there. And I want you to know that I did the color coding so that you know that at the emerging level, our students will need the most scaffold. And as you can see, by the time we reach the bridging, the color has faded because, you know, we release more of that scaffold. And so here is just an illustration of how I just took that standard, and it's standard number 3, part 1, and you can see that the specific language that I selected is here. So I think, I agree, and here is the other pieces. So you can start from there, and then you can build on or add as you want your students to participate in your lessons. So just making sure that that's an important piece in your lessons. So with our rich academic language, we also want to make sure and want to recommend to you that you build in images and videos in your lessons, as well as the TPR. For instance, having students signal with the thumbs up, facial expressions, pantomimes, to agree or disagree, and doing the signals with their with their hands or facial expressions. We also, excuse me, we also want to encourage students to practice language with their families and siblings. This is a good time for them to practice that. And of course, making sure that you pre-teach that vocabulary to students to make sure that you increase that comprehension and the ability for them to access the content during your lessons. And very briefly, I just wanted to show you that Colorín Colorado will take you to that little link, and it'll give you examples of how you can actually teach a read aloud, and it'll take you through all of the steps that you can take. So that's a good resource for you to see on how to do that. And so I wanted to include from the SEAL article that I shared earlier, some of the graphics that they have in there, but also how we can access different types of language for our academic tasks for our students. So these are some of the language functions for compare and contrast, and you can see them here on the left. And for our DLI schools, of course, SEAL always includes the Spanish part, so you'll see that as well. And so now I want to invite Sonal to share the online best practice, and that would be the number one.
To be sharing also an online learning best practice, and in this case, it's using screencasting to support English learners. And so if some of you are wondering, screencasting is simply a digital screen recording. You're able to record your actual screen, or you're also able to record yourself. And what that allows is that, for us to focus on the explicit focus on rich academic language. And, one example is using the TPR model that Angelica just mentioned, and also having students practice their academic language through you modeling it as an educator, and for students using that tool also. Now, I've listed several recommended resources for screencasting, and they're not the only ones out there in the world. I just want you to know that, but they are ones that I've used personally and have had success with. One of the most popular ones that is being used is Screencastify, and we are having a webinar training tomorrow on that one. So if you are interested in it, it is linked over here. But I want to just really quickly show you how Screencastify works, just so you can feel assured that it is quite a simple tool to use. So if we could just take a look over here at the top of my window, I have a little orange symbol there, a Screencastify symbol. All you need to do is download that from the Chrome Web Store. Once you have ensured that you've added that to your Chrome tabs, you can easily click on it and hit record. And I want you to see how easy it is to do that. And by the way, this is going to record my desktop. I can record in different ways. And in this case, I would need to make sure that my microphone and everything is set up first. I did reinstall this morning, which is why it gave me that screen. So I'm going to go back on this screen, go here, and it shows here that I'm embedding my webcam, because I want you to see that you can also have a video image of yourself in the right corner of this screen. So if I hit record here and click share, it looks kind of weird here right now. Okay, it's recording my screen right now. It's recording my screen with my video in the corner, because I put that I wanted to embed my video. So I could do anything at this point. I could use, hand and body gestures. I could, I could show a visual. I could share something that's on the screen, and it allows for that personal interaction with your students. And so if I click here again and click stop, by the way, I could throw this away if I didn't want it. I could restart it, pause it, or any of that. So I'm going to click stop right now. And here's my video recording. And right now, because of the COVID-19 situation, Screencastify is offering a 90-day premium access, which will allow you to trim your video and crop your video also. And it's as easy as really sharing the link into, it comes from the Google Drive. You can share that link. Here's your link. You can add it to your Google Classroom. If you don't have Google Classroom and you're using a different platform, you can copy the shareable link and add it to your whatever platform you choose to do. You can also publish it to YouTube, and that allows for the closed captioning feature to appear, which is, also recommended. And if, if those sharing options don't appeal to you, you can also download that video. but it is a really quick and simple screencasting tool that I wanted to share with you today.
We're going to continue with our consideration number 2, and this has to do with the emphasis of oral language. So as a reminder, there are 5 components of oral language, and it is important for us as educators to be aware of these, since they will really drive our oral language instruction and practice with our students. So very quickly, there is the first component, which is phonology, and it has to do with the sounds of language like chants and rhymes. The next one is morphology. That one has to do with parts of language like prefixes and suffixes. And then the vocabulary has to do with grammar. That's our third one. Vocabulary has to do with grammar, the structure of language, like when we use plurals, ed endings, past tense. And then the next one is discourse. That one takes the students to a higher level because it involves, for example, retelling a story with a beginning, middle, and end. And then the last one is pragmatics of language, and that's being able to understand and interpret when there is emphasis in a part of a phrase or a sentence. So thinking and getting our English learners to develop and engage in oral language, it is very critical. And knowing that we're going to be doing this virtually, we will need to get creative. I will admit we will need to get creative on some ways to do this. So one of the ways is videotaping your read-alouds, perhaps focusing on your fluency, your pronunciation, the intonation as you read out loud. Maybe videotaping your designated ELD mini lessons as you do your selected routines that your students are used to, and as you focus on language, modeling the think aloud, making sure students know how you are thinking so that they learn from you. And then asking comprehension questions, and don't hesitate to do this. Even if your students are not face-to-face with you, like you were in the classroom, you can still ask them those comprehension questions and allow wait time for them to respond. So when you do click on the oral language link, it will take you to a YouTube presentation on oral language, and it's put out by the Center for Applied Linguistics. Very good resource that I invite you to look at, because they talk about all the features on oral language. So the next one that I want to talk about, actually it's the same one, is the oral language. It's just a continuation. We already talked how important it is to take advantage of the chants, the songs, and play with the language with the students, specifically with our PK through second students. And I want to recommend NellieEdge.com has great resources on that oral language with lots of free poems and rhymes. And you can browse through there, NellieEdge.com. And then you can also teach the chants online, or if the students don't have a computer, you can send home some chants and songs booklets with the students, have them also practice with their families. And the great thing about going virtually is that you're still going to be able to break your students up in small groups when you teach your designated ELD virtually. And so later on, Sonal's going to show you how to do that.
Now, so we're talking about using online communication methods here, and I just want to share this little graphic over here about synchronous and asynchronous tools. So best practice for online learning is ensuring that we have a balance of synchronous and asynchronous communication tools. When we talk about synchronous, we're talking about same time communication, and asynchronous is not at the same time. So it would be something like an email or something that students can access and go on at their own pace. I'm not going to share too much about that part there, because Rosemary is going to do a nice little informational piece about that a little bit later on. But what I do want to emphasize here is oral language skills and how we can build on student oral language skills. One amazing resource in order to be able for you to do that is Flipgrid. Over here, I've included a Flipgrid guide, and if you click on it, you will see that it takes you to this blog, and this blog gives you all sorts of great information about how we can support English learners using Flipgrid. And it is being a little slow at the moment, so I'm going to be a little patient. And as that clicks, I do want to share with you that there is a guide for educators here too. If you are new to Flipgrid and you haven't used it before, it does look like this image right at the bottom where students or adults record a series of different videos, and you can set the amount of minutes that you want on that, and they can respond to any task that you as a teacher requires of them. And so here's the blog I was talking about empowering English learners. I highly recommend you go through that and see how it can be used to support students. We'll go back to this one here. So I want to share with you the sample. So I'm going to click on the sample here. Here we go. And this was a quick sample I threw together just so you can see what a Flipgrid activity could look like. And it would be up to you as a teacher or professional development provider to set this up, by using that Flipgrid guide and whatnot. Here's one that I created about making predictions. So I set this for a sample 4th grade activity. And what I was able to do was build in whatever I wanted to build in. So, for instance, I can add icons and tell the students exactly what I wanted them to do. This talks about making predictions, and I also included a sentence frame in there because I know that will support the students in my classroom, in particular the English learners in my classroom. And in this case, I only have one student in my class, and that's my very own daughter, Maya. And she did record something this morning, so feel free to take a look at that. But this is what it would appear as, and your student would just respond.
I predict that Jack will have the most gold in the mine because he's determined.
She's reading by the Great Horn Spoon. So, I allowed her to record a response to that. So that's what it would look like on a Flipgrid page. I highly recommend this tool. And there's many, many, many more tools and resources out there that support online communication methods. But, the overall summary of this is that we should be using a balance of both asynchronous and synchronous resources. Thank you.
Thank you again, San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, for sharing these excellent tips and resources. The entire recorded webinar, including the excerpt you saw today, is available at the links on this slide. Included on this slide is also the link to the Heather Skibbons article from which the 6 key considerations were derived. Next. Our next LEA will present on distance learning for dual language instruction. Woodland Joint Unified School District, or Woodland, has not only developed a strong distance learning plan, but also created a plan to continue dual language learning for their district multilingual programs. The well-articulated plan took time and collaboration across all levels to create and is now implemented. Woodland demonstrates the 4 principles of the English Learner Roadmap in action. Welcome, Elodia Ortega-Lampkin and Maria Roscoe. Thank you for sharing your work with us today.
Good afternoon. We're very happy to be here and to share with you our distance learning and dual immersion instructional plan. Next. So who are we? Woodland is a district up in Northern California. We're a medium-sized school district with about 10,000 students. We have 17 schools and 5 of those where we have dual immersion programs. Next. Out of the 5 dual immersion programs that we have in our district, 3 of them are elementary schools and 2 are middle schools. Next. So when we all were faced with this challenge of changing our way that we teach with a little time, we decided to take an approach that was phased in. We knew that we needed to go slow to go fast, and that we needed to take our time to adjust as we move forward with distance learning. That we need to also consider teachers' time and allow the teachers' time to learn and adjust with their own challenges at home, adjust to their time management, and to be very flexible through the process. As we knew the situations had changed for teachers being at home now having to adjust to their new classroom environments and being very worried about what was going on with their students. We also knew that no teacher or school or administrator could do this on their own. We knew that we needed to take a team approach and that we needed to have a lot of collaboration and to work together during this time and to support one another. We kept saying that we need to be kind to one another, be forgiving to one another, and to be okay with making mistakes along the way. We also led with at the beginning with right away talking about what do we do during this time and to be equitable to the needs of all our students, making sure that we kept in mind the needs of our special ed students, our low income families that may not have internet, Chromebook access, and our dual immersion, our Spanish speakers, our English learner families, our migrant students, our newcomers. We really needed to make sure that from the beginning we started planning and looking at through that lens at every step of the way. And today we're going to talk to you specifically about how we did that specifically for the needs of our dual immersion programs, because we recognize that our programs needed to have special consideration along the way, and that we needed to consider the impact of the language programs that we had at our schools, the needs of our teachers, the communication with our parents, and access to the dual immersion programs that our students were engaged in the regular school program. So we led with that, with making sure we were flexible, that we had equity lens, and that we were collaborative. And with the work of Maria Orozco, she is our English learner coordinator for our district. And she helped lead the charge in that specific area with our teachers during all our distance learning program. So I'm going to pass it on to Maria so she can get into the nuts and bolts of how we did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elodia. As Elodia mentioned, we took a three-phase approach to implement distance learning for our district. We definitely started slow to go fast, and we spent time thinking of all the critical pieces. And in our first, in the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, which I'll describe in each subsequent slide, you'll see which approach we took at each slide and how we incorporated our special ed students, our dual immersion students, and our students' social and emotional needs. Next. Our phase 1 included, it was a week long, and we incorporated voluntary enrichment and learning opportunities for all of our students, TK 12th grade. So during this phase, we pushed out in TK through 6th grade learning packets, optional learning packets for our TK through 6th grade students in English and Spanish. We made sure that everything was available in Spanish and English for our dual immersion students, as well as for possibly for our newcomer students who needed access to content. In our 7th through 12th grade grades, we provided learning templates, learning plans for students to access optional learning opportunities in both English and Spanish, as well to keep our dual immersion students engaged during this phase, as well as incorporating our newcomer EL students in our upper grades. We distributed these packets, the elementary packets, as well during our food distribution times. We felt it was important to provide access to our families. We knew a lot of our families would be participating. We provided all the information. We spent this entire time planning, really thinking out how this distance learning model would look long-term, what our special ed program would look like, what our counseling program would look like, and how we communicate all that information out to all of our stakeholders consistently through various modes of communication. And of course, always keeping our dual immersion program needs in mind. They were part of the initial stages of planning throughout all the phases. Next. One of the main challenges that our teachers, as we rolled out the first week of phase 1, our teachers were very concerned that our dual immersion students, how would they know? They kept emailing me and asking me, how will our students know that they need to complete the Spanish work? Where will they be noted? And so we engaged in a campaign where our dual immersion principals and our teachers did a lot of outreach to our families, to our students, communicating over and over that they knew what lessons they needed to complete in English and what they needed to complete in Spanish to keep our students engaged, particularly in this case and with Spanish, since it's our minority language in our district. So really our teachers and our administrators did a great job keeping our families up to speed, knowing that lessons, more specific lessons were being worked on as we moved on through the phases. Next. This is just an example of one of the learning templates that we pushed out during phase one. Always everything is in English and Spanish to provide access to our dual immersion and our EL families. And there's a provided schedule for our families and all the content areas so that our families would have something to engage with as we rolled out distance learning. Next. Phase two was our longer phase, and here we spent a lot of time planning. We met as an Ed Services team, I think probably every day and Saturday and Sundays for like 2 to 3 weeks straight. We really planned and really incorporated we engaged with all the different stakeholders. We provided our teachers a survey to engage. We needed to know what they knew and what they needed to know so we could provide that professional development via our technology PD modules through our Tectosis. We engaged in a lot of communication. Like I said, we met consistently with our Ed Services team, all of our administrators, and then we communicated that with our parents, with our teachers, and with the different stakeholders, our counselors, our PPS department, our special ed, and our Ed Services. We decided that we would be providing standards-based instruction, that we would choose standards and areas of focus as we move forward, really to try to keep the lens of equity alive. We wanted everyone to really receive the same level of rigor and instruction as we move forward. And then we really worked on as well to incorporate our counseling services, that our communicare were involved, that we were meeting our students' social emotional needs, that our special ed folks were on board, and that we would be developing a plan side by side of how we would be providing supports for our SEL needs as well as our special needs. And at the same time, continue developing our grade level lessons for our structured English immersion programs as well as our dual immersion programs. Next. A key piece that Elodia mentioned was our administrators. Our administrators took charge of this plan. Our Ed Services team, our directors developed a plan that incorporated a lot of collaboration. We spent the first 3 weeks meeting consistently with grade level teams. Every administrator received a grade level. Every dual immersion administrator received a different dual immersion team. And we met as grade level teams to really set up the stage, set our stage up for our teachers, make clear expectations. We shared what standards we would be covering for the first several weeks. We provided a template where our teachers knew exactly what lesson pieces they needed to provide. In our secondary, we had specific questions that needed to be addressed. One of them was language acquisition and basically access to the content. In those grade level teams, our Spanish dual immersion teams then broke up from those grade level teams into smaller content areas that match our dual immersion model. So we developed lessons in SLD, Spanish language development, Spanish language arts, math, and social studies and sciences, depending on the grade level in the model. So each group in the smaller group was charged with developing lessons for the entire district. For example, my team, the first grade dual immersion team, we developed lessons in Spanish for math for the entire first grade team and Spanish for dual immersion, as well as Spanish language arts, which aligns to our model. And our secondary, our Spanish teacher and our history teachers in Spanish, they developed their lessons to keep developing and pushing out lessons following the standards that they were on when we closed. Each of those lessons was on a weekly basis, every Friday submitted to your lead administrator who reviewed the lessons and approves them. I say review because we're still doing it. We just started week 4 today. And the lessons are reviewed for access, for content, make sure that there's scaffolds and all of the best practices, that research-based practices that we know. At the end of this phase, we have, in the first 2 weeks of distance learning, we completed, in 3 weeks of planning, we completed 2 weeks of lessons. Next. One of the challenges we faced during phase 2 was just ensuring, as we broke into smaller content area dual immersion teams, was that our Spanish dual immersion teams had their materials. Our schools were closed. We didn't have access to everything, so we need to figure out how to have access to our materials. And another layer of that was, and now we were collaborating. All 3 elementary schools were collaborating across all 3 schools. So all first grade teachers from Dingle, Prairie, and Beamer, who generally don't plan together all the time, now we're planning together. So that posed some challenges in terms of just getting people on the same page and having to negotiate how we were going to deliver lessons. So we're excited about that because I think we broke the ice in terms of collaboration, and we're excited as we move forward that we'll be able to continue that level of collaboration district-wide. So that piece is exciting for us. Next. So this is just an example of last week's template, and this is a second grade. We call this a choice board, and this is all the lessons are pushed out on Monday for all of our students. They're available on our district website. Each of the numbers on this template represents Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You'll see there for dual immersion, we have Spanish language arts, 5 lessons that were developed, and 5 lessons in math that were all developed in Spanish. And then there's ELD and all the other content areas in English, and as well as the content areas in Spanish. Our teachers, in addition, push all of these lessons out via their Google Classroom or their Seesaw platforms to their specific students. And all of our elementary and our middle school teachers hold 2 Google Hangouts per week, 30 minutes long or longer, where they review the lessons, they practice the oral language development, and they support the students in any of the lessons that the students may need support with. In addition, our teachers report that they're holding small group instruction. Besides the 2 Google Hangouts where they're supporting students, they collaborate. They created buddies for English only students with our EL students to have more additional practice time with oral language in the lessons. One of our first grade team did that. In our middle school platform as well, our teachers meet with our students twice a week, and then they hold small groups to support their students with the lesson. So all of the lessons are pushed out on a weekly basis, and then every day. And the teachers in our 4th through 6th grade also created journals that were modified to include our Spanish content areas, where they collect all the work. So we're monitoring via that journal that our students are completing their Spanish lessons on a day. Our teachers have done a great job, and our administrators are dual immersion, to make sure that our families know that we do our Spanish lessons first. It's been the message during distance learning, and then we go on to our English lessons to make sure that our Spanish doesn't get ignored. So our principals and teachers are working really hard to make sure that the students understand we're still doing 50-50 even during distance learning, and here are your lessons every day, and this is the model that you should follow every day. Next. In phase 3, which began on April 20th, our teachers began implementing what I just described, what we spent 3 weeks planning in phase 2. They started rolling out our actual lessons, pushing out our lessons, conducted our Google Hangouts. Parents received tons of notification in English and Spanish that we were going live, what we called live, with our teaching. And as we're on week 4, beginning week 4 today, we continue to monitor our progress. We continue to monitor our participation rate for our students, and we're monitoring our work completion rate as well. And we'll be making any modifications based on a survey that was just completed by over 2,000 of our kids participated, parents and teachers as well. So we're constantly reflecting and moving forward. In addition to providing distance learning to all of our students, TK-12, we're also pushed out another set of preschool through 2nd grade packets, learning packets, in English and Spanish to really support any student who may be having difficulties logging on for whatever reason. We did provide technology for all of our students, TK, actually preschool were as well. But in case some students are having difficulties logging on, we also provide the additional layer. Plus, some parents really informed us that they really like the paper pencil option. They didn't want their students online all the time. So our teachers continue planning lessons. Today they meet again at 1 o'clock. We meet every 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1 o'clock. We collaborate and they meet in between. Our dual immersion teachers meet Tuesdays and Thursdays to collaborate. And now in this phase as well, our special education services have also started case managing our students and providing additional minutes and support. Next. And finally, as well, our counseling services. We took some time as well, in addition to rolling out our distance learning lessons, our dual immersion lessons in Spanish. We wanted to make sure that our students' SEL needs were being met. So our counseling services are going on now as we speak. Our counselors are calling, reaching out. Whoever was being seen before continues to be seen now virtually via the phone. We took care of all the permissions and change of program, as well as for our special ed students. We have attendance liaisons who are now checking in on week 4, all of our students, if they're not engaged, checking in with them, making sure that what are the barriers so we can support them as well. And as we continue with providing technology and additional Wi-Fi to any family who now qualified, who didn't qualify previously, our tech TOSAs continue to provide professional development. We continue to develop PD modules simultaneously. As we review the lessons, we notice and we debrief with our teachers about what do they need more of. And this week, our tech TOSA in our grade level will be providing support on Wednesday on how to make the lessons more engaging for our first graders. So the PD is ongoing for all of our staff. Next. Some next steps for us include continue meeting as a whole group and continue meeting as a small group for our dual immersion programs, checking in with our dual immersion team to make sure that their specific needs are being met, that our journals are being modified as necessary, that our lessons are scaffolded, that there's language frames available for all of our students in English and Spanish, for our ELs, make sure that they have access. We have audio in all of our lessons now and the lower grades so we can support our younger learners. And really continue working across grade level collaboration to ensure that we have equitable education for all of our students. And really the last piece is also continuing to support our teachers through professional development. We're really excited about all the things. Our teachers just jump right in. We gave them time to learn, to process. And as we move forward, we're excited about the new changes that we may see in the fall as we hopefully reopen or depending on what education looks like in the fall. And finally, just to comment on our dual immersion teachers, you know, they are one of the hardest grouping teachers. They work super hard all the time, no complaints. They jump in and they do what they're asked to do, and they really pride themselves in the work that they do every day, and is evident by the lessons that they're putting out, that they're rigorous, they're academic, they're scaffolded, they're engaging. They really care that their students receive the best distance learning education possible. Next. And finally, if you have any additional questions and you need to reach us, there's my contact information, and you'll also find two website links where you may find, you can find all of our information, all of our parent communication, all of our templates, and all of our weekly samples. All of our lessons are live. You can click on them and then TK through 6, and you actually will get the lesson as well. So there's plenty of samples there for your review. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Elodia and Maria, for sharing the important work that you've accomplished in Woodland Joint Unified School District. For more information, you can contact Woodland with the information on this slide. Next. A few other updates for you. The CDE issued new guidance on flexibility resulting from COVID-19 regarding grading, graduation, and financial aid. The California State Board of Education, the California Department of Education, the California State University and University of California Systems, the California Community Colleges, and the Association of Independent California Colleges and Universities issued a joint statement outlining support for distance learning, strategies for flexibility in grading, and guidance for adjustment of local graduation requirements. Specifically for students graduating in 2020, pass or fail or credit, no credit will be accepted for A through G courses without affecting grade point average or GPA. Financial aid needs will be evaluated for families whose circumstances have changed. There will be flexibilities associated with the receipt of official transcripts and confirmation of admission office, including deferments of deposits or fees. Flexibility and support for students currently enrolled in dual enrollment course offerings, and for community college students seeking to transfer to a four-year university, there will be acceptance of credit, no credit in lieu of letter grades in the Golden 4 and general education or prerequisite courses completed at a community college in winter, spring, or summer of 2020. Next. Superintendent Tony Thurmond is collaborating through the Digital Divide Task Force, co-chaired by State Senator Connie Leyva, to address inequities compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic regarding families' access to digital services and digital devices. The goal of the task force is to help level the playing field for students who are economically challenged or living in rural communities without access to internet service. The task force endeavors through cross-sector partnerships to ensure that all students in the state have the resources they need to thrive academically in a digital world. More information on the Digital Divide Task Force and its work can be found at the link on this slide. Next. And back to Veronica.
Thank you, Lori. The English Learner Support Division publishes a weekly newsletter that contains resources, updates, and other information related to the many challenges faced during the COVID-19 environment. Current and back issues are posted on the CDE English Learner Updates newsletter webpage at the link on this slide. Please share this information widely. Next. The English Learner Support Division also publishes a weekly online parent newsletter in English, Spanish, Arabic, Filipino, Chinese, and Vietnamese. As you know, 80% of our students that are learning English speak Spanish, and the top 5 languages are represented on the list that we translate the newsletter to. It provides links to resources on topics about English learners, distance learning, and multilingual education. The newsletter also includes resources for parents seeking assistance with meals and other resources that support their child while in distance learning. Through the link on this slide, one can access all published newsletters. They are designed for parents, so please share them with all your parent groups. And we're hoping that districts find them just as useful as the many districts that have already started sharing them. Next. Please remember to visit the CDE coronavirus or COVID-19 webpage frequently, as it is regularly updated. There are links to obtaining internet information for parents so that they could get connectivity, and all the new task forces that are evolving as we progress through this distance learning time. This page is specifically dedicated to house the most current information on the CDE's response, but also from other agencies to the COVID-19 pandemic. You will find this page at the link on this slide. Next. I just want to say thank you for attending this webinar. The questions, comments, and ideas entered into the chat will be kept. Responses will be found on a document that will be housed with this recorded webinar. The CDE encourages local education agencies who would like to share their work regarding English language development and dual language instruction to contact the English Learner Support Division by email or phone. You have the information on the slide. This recorded webinar, including the presentation shown, will be posted on the CDE COVID-19 webpage. Again, the link is on the slide. From all of us at the California Department of Education, thank you for joining us today and for your dedication to making a difference in a multilingual student's life. Stay safe and healthy. De parte de todos el personal del Departamento de California, muchísimas gracias. Que sigan con salud.